Hello and welcome to my session, Kickstarting app deployment in Microsoft Intune with PowerShell. If you want to share today, be sure to include the hashtag Scottish Summit 2021. And of course, we'll take a little moment today to start by thanking our sponsors, ScriptRunner, DQ Global, Proximo 3, Redspire, Agilysys, and Hitachi Solutions. Without their effort, this event wouldn't even be possible. So thanks again. And let's explain a little bit who I am and what I am about. I'm a senior Microsoft 365 consultant. My name is Karel Pelckmans. I focus mainly on the technical side of the project to implement many facets of the Microsoft 365 stack, including the endpoint management with Endpoint Manager these days and not Intune, and Exchange, migrating to Exchange Online from on-premise environments. Recently started a blog, karelpelck.be. I'm trying to be more active there and post some more content. And if you want to reach out, I'm active on Twitter and LinkedIn, and you can always find me on Twitter at the handle Karel Pelck as well. So let's summarize what our session is going to be about today. We're going to start with why. I like to start with why, because if you don't have a reason to do something, why do it at all? So we have good reasons to do this automation with PowerShell. We're going to talk a little bit about the old ways and how we're improving on this. Let's discuss a little bit what's out there that we can use for our solutions, and then how we're going to do this with Microsoft Intune or Endpoint Manager, as it's been rebranded. A long life tradition of Microsoft to rebrand their products and rename everything. I'm using a toolkit to deploy these apps into Intune very fast and on a structured manner. So I'm going to be talking about that, and that toolkit is based on PowerShell, of course. And then we're going to do a little demo to see it all in action and give you a few tips how you can use this in the field. So let's start with why we want to do this at all. And what I want to say is that automation saves us time. And I think that's the most important fact. On a second note is we're going to be talking how to do this with Intune, Endpoint Manager. And that is a cloud solution that gives us proper flexibility to deploy applications wherever your endpoint actually resides. So if it's in the office or if people are working from home during this COVID period, I think everybody is learning how this flexibility is important in our modern days. Now, we would like to get started very fast. Usually app deployment, if you want to automate anything, well, first automating it takes a little bit of time, and we want to get started pretty fast. So I'm going to show you how you can do some basic things, some basic app deployments in a matter of minutes. So furthermore, there are some tools available to us, but we like to improve on those tools because usually they have a certain way you have to work with them, and we'd like to make that more logical so we can get started faster. Again, it's all about speed, and we would like to reduce some complexity and make everything a bit more easy, and easy means, again, faster. Making so that we don't have to remember everything and that everything is a little bit structured and repetitive to do. So there have been the old ways. I always talk about the old ways. The old ways won't open new doors is a quote I like very much. And I always like to learn new things. That always is a good thing to do to keep up to speed with all this new cloud technology and all the improvements that we get every day. So keep learning. It's a very important skill to have to learn fast. So what was out there back in the day, or maybe even today, are these methods are being used still for application deployment. I remember when I started for certain applications, there were huge manuals sometimes to use installers and then change some settings in Windows for time and other displaying features. And usually that could be a Word document about 10 pages long to do these installations. We would roll the applications out with GPOs and scripts. We could, if we imaged our desktops, we could pre-install this software and then image this desktop and then re-image every other device to get the software already installed on the device when we're rolling them out. Using tools like MDT and of course SCCM, which is a great tool if you have the environment to run it. But I like the cloud a little bit more because of its flexibility. These days you have cloud attached and everything with ConfigMan, but I'm more of a full cloud guy. On-prem sucks is a sticker that is priced on my computer, so you can understand that a little bit. But so if you want to go and do it better than we did it before, then we have to look at what is out there that we can use, because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. These days we have a few amazing tools out there. There is MSIX that Microsoft is promoting. Intune Win is a packager that has been made for easy packaging that you can deploy with Microsoft Intune and Endpoint Manager. You have Chocolatey, an open source library with a huge repository of packages that you can just dig into. It's available for free with some limitations. There is an app called Rupsuk. Be sure to look that up. It's a little bit different, maybe not for automation purposes, but it can be helpful. You have payable services like Patch My PC that actually do a little bit the same like Chocolatey, but have actually people working day and night to keep these packages up to date and things like that. So it has added value. And then you have Microsoft trying to get in the market with its own software packaging and deploying toolkit with WinGet. It's still in beta, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. And then you still have the Microsoft Store or Store for Business to integrate into Intune as well to deploy packages. But we're not going to be digging into that today. We're going to be focusing on some ways to use automation with scripting to get us up and started very, very fast. I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into MSIX because it's an amazing way or great advantages to it to be using it. First of all, its reliability. Microsoft is boasting a 99.96 success rate for all the installations that have been done with MSIX packages. And you can also repackage existing Windows apps with the MSIX packaging tool. How that really works is a little bit like you can set up a recording, like you would record a session like this, but then you would install a package, and at the end of your installation, the toolkit would spit out an MSIX installer package for you. Now, if you use these methods, there is an obvious downside to it. There is no way to automate this repackaging for you at the moment. So if you need to create updates of these packages, you'll be doing that yourselves. And that makes it, of course, time intensive. As a second one to dig a little bit deeper into, because probably after the demo you'll think maybe I can use this as well to replace some of the functionality of what I'm going to show you with Chocolatey, is the winget tool. And the winget is a command line tool. So that allows us to do some automation as well. You can find it on GitHub. And this command line tool has the options to install, update, and uninstall software. So with the commands and the commands that are available, you can just install certain software, update it later on if the package is updated in the repository, or uninstall the software as well. So to automate this is some of the basic functionality that we'll need. It's of course also open source, so you can contribute to it. And there is a community repository that you can also contribute to. So that means that people that need certain packages, they can actually create a manifest that you can add to the community repository so that other people can use it again. And that makes it a valuable tool because the repository will grow with community effort as well. What are some of the downsides today is that it's still in beta. So there is no stable release yet at this point. So if you want to use it in production, first test, and be aware that if there is an update or you have to install an update, it might break some stuff. So it's not that reliable. There is currently also no automatic way to update the winget command line tool itself unless you're going to be using the insider builds of Windows 10. So that's an important consideration to make as well. And then the one that we'll be using for our solution today is Chocolatey, for one. And this is also a command line toolkit. So the command line is going to help us automate things with this. Also, the install, update, and uninstall commands are available. There is a very big repository that has package moderation. So they're moderating these packages that are being added to this repository. And there is also an easy solution to let these apps that you deploy with Chocolatey update themselves a little bit automagically. So what are the options there? You can, for instance, install a Chocolatey package that will do an upgrade or update of all your Chocolatey-based installs at startup of your PC. Or you can use another Chocolatey package that gives you a little bit more options, like that you can schedule an update time, like you want to schedule the update for during the lunch breaks. So there is a stable release of this one, so that's very important, and it's also free, so you can use this for free. But the free versions, of course, has some limitations. So the amount of packages you'll be able to install from an IP address within a certain frame of time are limited. The details of this you can find on the Chocolatey website under the disclaimer. So if we want to leverage these solutions, how are we going to do this? To do this, we are going to be using PowerShell. And that is a great solution, and that has evolved over the past years as well. So we can do a lot with PowerShell and Endpoint Manager these days. But let's see where it all started a little bit. You've always been able to package scripts, but it's been improving over time. So we've been able to deploy scripts with Intune. And that was just a little bit of a one shot, no real added value. So you could use it to install apps with these scripts and then deploy these scripts to your devices, and all the reporting you would get back is that this script install was successful or it wasn't. So not really a lot of certainty on how your applications were going to get deployed. You had no follow-up if users would have uninstalled these applications because it wouldn't get triggered again. So to get more value out of this about installing applications with scripts, you would be able to package them. And Endpoint Manager actually has some native Win32 app deployment possibilities from the cloud. And to be able to do this, we got the Intune Win packaging tool that we're going to be leveraging today, but you would also be able to, for instance, package this to an MSIX. But the Intune Win packaging tool will be able to automate, and that is going to get us this speedy deployment scenario that we are going to be showing you today. So remember, you can also do MSIX, but that will take you more time to get your packages up and running. So we're going to do that, and we're going to be packaging PowerShell scripts to install applications. We can go much further than that because we can also use PowerShell scripts to do a lot of other different things, like, for instance, deploying printers and installing fonts, setting up some configurations, changing configurations, and even if we use the Win32 deployment method, we can actually also do a detection of our install. We can do this with several methods. We can do a file check, see if the file exists, check if a path exists. We can check registry keys, and we can check for MSI install codes as well. But you can go much further than that, but that's a little bit more complicated, is that you can also use custom detection scripts. And then you can check complicated installs, see if everything is as you like, and then let the script decide if the install was successful, yes or no, or if Intune needs to try and install it again later on. So let's make it easy on ourselves, and to get started very fast, let's use a toolkit to put all these packages and apps together and put them also in Intune without having to click 20 times for each application through the portal. So I haven't invented this completely myself. I found a solution that was created by Ben Reeder. He has some great and powerful stuff that he made with PowerShell. He's amazing at that. Personally, I'm not a PowerShell wizard, and I've been able to use this easily as well. So let's tell you a little bit what this solution can do. First of all, it has a function to quickly set up your packaging and deploying environment. It has a function to create these packages, so you can use PowerShell, get help, and autocomplete. And there is a function to deploy these packages to the endpoint portal. which will save you a lot of time. Now, I made my own little adaptation of this deployment script, and you can also find this on GitHub, or you can get on GitHub and get the solution from the original developer. So be sure to credit him for this as well. So let's discuss a little bit the basics of how the solution works. There is a basic file structure, and if you clone my repository, then that will be clear right away. And if we go in the demo later on, then you will see how this will work. There is a source folder that will keep all your source file for your packages, and you can include any helper files on top of your script to deploy as well, like CSVs with some data and things like that. And we'll show you how you do that. And there is a YAML file. You can compare this a little bit to a JSON file. It's a file format that allows us to store some parameters or attributes to be able to use those in our scripts as well. With our function, we'll create a package, and that will be dropped in a package folder to be able to be picked up by our deployment function. So with no further ado, I suggest we go for a little demo and see how we put this all together. So let's first have a look at the file structure you're getting if you're downloading my GitHub repository. You can find it, my GitHub repository, just on GitHub with the handle for my account is Karel Pelck, like my Twitter handle. And there you will find the Intune app deployment toolkit as well. And in this folder, once you cloned this repository, you'll find the most important folder is the toolkit folder. And then you'll have a bunch of sample folders for Adobe Reader, Chocolatey, and a printer deployment sample as well. So let's have a look first in our build and deployment toolkit folder. And there you'll see you have 3 PowerShell scripts. One is to build packages, one is to deploy packages to the Intune portal, and one is to prepare your environment. Prepare the environment will download and make available all the PowerShell modules that you'll need to run these scripts. And it will download also the proper tools to package and upload your files to the cloud environment. The packaging tool and the upload tool will be stored in the bin folder that will be created if you run prepare environment as a script. And the script you will need to run as as an administrator to install all your modules. If you work in that way, you can also use the user scope to install them otherwise. What more do you have in our Intune deployment toolkit folder is ones are samples. Let's start with the simplest is the printer deployment sample. And what do we have here? We have our YAML file that will provide all the attributes and properties of our app for uploading and packaging. And we have the source folder, and there this will contain all our source files that will be packaged in the package. So if we look into the source file for this example, we'll have a script that will install the printers. We have a CSV that will have all the printers in there and their properties. And we have a folder that contains the drivers of these printers. We're not going to go into detail about how this script for printer install is working because that's not really the scope of this session. But if you look into my GitHub repository, you can play around with these files yourself. The second example that we have here that we're going to be looking into is the Chocolatey. So we have two folders here. We have the Chocolatey CLI tool itself that is being packaged, meaning that it's in the Chocolatey deploy folder. And then we have all the different apps from the repositories that we want to deploy, and those you can find in the Chocolatey app deploy folder. So let's have a look. It's going to be pretty much the same thing. We have a YAML file with the settings, and we have a source file with our source for our package. So in the source file here, you just find a simple PowerShell script that will trigger and install Chocolatey, and the automatic update package of your choosing can be included as well. So let's have a look at the apps, and then we'll look a little bit at the code. So here we have actually one source for all the different apps. So you don't have to build a new script for each app that you want to deploy. So that makes it a little bit easier. So the only thing that you have to create for each app to be able to deploy it into Intune is actually one YAML file with all the attributes and settings. And that will include everything you need to upload this application into the Intune portal. So let's have a look here, and you can see all the examples here are actually packages that you will find in the Chocolatey app repository. Now you can find in these app folders that are basically source YAML file and then the Intune win file. That is not there by default. The Intune win file will be created and will contain the actual package that you will create with the build package of the toolkit. So if all that is a little bit clear, I will go see how this works in action. Before we forget, before we can really dig into how this all works in reality, as we have to look a little bit closer at what is contained in these YAML files, to be exact. So we'll take our Chocolatey installer as an example to see what's all required to be filled in this particular instance. So what do we have here? We have, for instance, first all the application parameters that are there. You need to define the app name, the publisher. You can define a description. You have to specify the actual install file that you will be used. This in most of these instances, this is going to be your PowerShell script, and then you can include the install command line and the uninstall command line. Those are the basic parameters that you will need to include to upload your app into the Intune portal. You can also define the requirements. You can just copy paste those from my repository as they are defined in my sample apps, or you can adjust them to your own liking and requirements. What you have there is the run as 32 if you want to specifically run as not the 64-bit instance of PowerShell. And you can specify the minimal Windows 10 version that you want for your application. And then the last part is a little bit more tricky, is because you have the three different detection settings that you can define by default. I don't have an option yet to include a custom detection script here, but we'll look into that maybe as an improvement for in the future. So first of all, you have to define the detection type that you want to use, whether it is file, registry of MSI or MSI code. And for file, you can define the path, the folder or file name, and the detection type. So in this case, for Chocolatey, to detect whether the application was properly installed, we're going to check for the choco.exe executable in the Chocolatey program data folder. And we're just going to check if this file exists, and if this this program actually exists, then we'll accept that the install has been probably executed and that the application is installed on the device. So that's a little bit summary how this YAML file will actually define how this application is built and also how it's deployed into Intune. So now we're ready to actually see this in action. So let's have a look. We're currently in a command line and PowerShell command line interface where we are located in our Intune app deployment toolkit folder. If we run a list item command, then we'll see all our folders that we discussed earlier with our Chocolatey samples, our printer deployment sample, and our build and deploy toolkit. Now, in our first instance, we're going to be looking at our build and deploy toolkit, because we're going to be, before we start with building and deploying applications, we're going to prepare our environment to be able to do that, because we need some modules that are going to be used by our scripts, and we're going to need some of the command line tools that we discussed earlier. For one, we're going to need the Intune Win packaging tool, and we're going to need the AZ copy tool, command line tool, to be able to upload our packages to the cloud so that Endpoint Manager can actually assign them to an app we create in the Endpoint Manager portal through these scripts by using the Graph API. So in this instance, we're going to just run prepare environment PowerShell script, and this script is going to check if these modules are actually installed on my computer. It's also going to check if the proper versions of Intune Win and the AZ copy tool are in the bin folder. And if it detects that there is a newer version, it will download the newer version into the bin folder for you to use the latest version of these command line tools as well. So let's run our command. You'll see that it's downloading the files to check against the files that are already available on our system. It sees that the YAML module is already installed, the Azure AD module is installed, so it doesn't need to install it again. And it checks it checks if the latest version of the CLI tool are actually available. And then it says checks if the environment is configured to be able to do this properly. So let's clear this up. So now that our environment is actually set up properly, we want to go and build our packages. So let's have a quick look. For the occasion, I deleted the Intune Win folder that was already present in the Chocolatey deploy folder. So this is the actual package that we're going to create, is the package to deploy Chocolatey to a Windows 10 device. So what are we going to do? We're going to use our build package script, and the only parameter that we actually have to give to be able to build this script is our app config parameter, and there you have to just pass on the YAML file with the config of this package. So the YAML file that we have created contains the name, the name of our install file, the script, description, etc., the install command line. We don't need all these settings to be able to build our package, but it makes it easy that you can use the same app config folder just for building the package as well as for uploading it to your Endpoint Manager. So the only thing that we have to do here is actually adding this package, the URL to your YAML configuration file to this command line. So let's just have it a little bit ready here to copy paste. Let's see what we have here. Chocolatey.yaml. So we have the path to our YAML configuration file for our build package script. And now we're just going to run this. You'll get some feedback, and then you'll see that it has created the Chocolatey Intune Win package into the Intune Win folder, subfolder of our package source folder. So let's have a look. It's here, and you'll see the Intune Win file is created, just 4 kilobytes, just a simple script that will install our Chocolatey package. So now we want to deploy this to the Endpoint Manager portal, and for this we'll have our deploy script. We're not going to go into detail into the code because then we would need a session of a few more hours. So let's dig up our script, deploy package. And yet again, we just have to see that we can deploy the app config, add the app config file to our script as a parameter. So just as before, let's complete this. There we are. And there's one more parameter that we'll need to use here, and that is actually the user to upload our file so that it can detect the proper tenant to upload it to. So in this instance, I had prepared a demo tenant for this, and you'll see we'll add the user here. And if we deploy our package, we'll get some feedback, and you'll see that it will request a modern authentication flow here. So let's copy paste our password. I know, no multi-factor authentication, shame on me. First time it will request the permissions, and if you want, you can of course consent on behalf of your organization. So for this demo tenant, we are going to pass this so that we doesn't get asked again the next time. So you get a lot of verbose feedback from our package script, where it's going to create the URLs to upload the package. It's going to upload the package to the cloud, and then it's going to create the application based on that package with the parameters that we defined in our YAML file. So let's wait till it's properly committed. I have a little bit of a sleep time included as well. And if we are going to be looking in our tenant, let's have a look. This package is going to be uploaded here. The only thing that is left for you to do is actually assign the package to a group of users or devices. Now, you might say, I might be able to just open the Endpoint Manager portal and just upload this as well and just set the settings for one application. This is not so much work to do, but to be honest, we just want to deploy a lot of apps. So for instance, for all the Microsoft 365 consultants here that are doing a little bit of device management in there, they want to deploy apps. Well, if you have to do 20 apps every time you start a new tenant, then you want to do this a lot faster than just clicking through the portal. So one way to do this is just to see that you can pass all these YAML files in a loop to this script, and then you can just upload all the files at once and just wait till it's completed. And then all you have to do is just assign these applications to groups. So how we're going to be able to do this is, for instance, we have all these YAML files are in our folder structure. So you might be able to just use getChildItem and get all the YAML files in your folder structure and just upload them all at once. Let's demonstrate this by example of our Chocolatey deploy folder, because in our Chocolatey deploy folder, we have, of course, a lot of YAML files for each of the different applications that we are going to deploy that are being installed from our Chocolatey repository. So let's have a look how that looks. For instance, if we would get, let's clear this up a little bit, all the child items from our Chocolatey app deploy folder, we just get all the YAML files out of there. You can list them. And if you can list all those YAML files, you can also just loop them through and pass them to our deploy package configuration. So let's have a look how that command might look. So we have our, let's clear this again. So we have our previous command where we got all our YAML file configurations. So what we would do is that we would just pass them on to a for each loop. And then we're going to run our deploy package script, and we're going to add our app config file. And in the app config file, we need to pass now the path to our YAML files. So the parameter for that that is being passed from the getChild item is the full name parameter. And then we just need to add our user. And this one command line is going to upload all our packages in this folder. So that's going to be around a little bit less than 40 files. So let's just start this up. And there we go. So we already authenticated. So our session is still running, so you don't have to re-authenticate every time you upload a new package, because it's using the token that you used the first time as well. So you have to just run this one command, and it's going to upload 38 new packages into the portal. And the only thing you have left to do is actually assigning them to a group. Now, there is one thing that you might want to do extra, because to be able to install all those apps from Chocolatey, you will need the Chocolatey command line tool as well installed. So you might do one more extra thing. Let's go into the properties and actually set the dependency for Chocolatey application as well with automatically install. That will, if you want to install that application, if it's assigned and it's being pushed to a Windows 10 device, it will also pick up the CLI tool first and install it before it will install this application. So that dependency might be pretty important. So one improvement to the script would be able to add dependencies as well, so that you can you don't have to do those manually either. And that's it. That's the magic I wanted to show you. If I had more time, I would go deeper into the PowerShell code, but you can find it on my GitHub repository. So with that, I would like to end this and thank you for watching my session, and hopefully we'll talk in the future. Goodbye.